Welcome to Apple Teeny, where robot fingers, foldables, and car software all get very weird. An AI remotely installing Ubuntu by pressing actual physical buttons is one of those stories that sounds fake until you see the tiny robot finger. And somehow that still wasn't the nerdiest part of this batch. The setup here is ridiculous in the best way. They've got a remote-controlled KVM acting like a physical VNC client, plus a Bluetooth fingerbot, and that gives Codex the ability to wipe a mini PC, mash its way into BIOS, and install Ubuntu without a human sitting there babysitting it. That's not software automation in the abstract, that's hardware-level robot babysitting for an operating system install, which is both hilariously overbuilt and kind of amazing. They also took a few swings at Ubuntu's UI, which, fair, if you're used to Mac-style ergonomics, a lot of Linux desktop stuff still feels like you're volunteering to become your own IT department. Fedora comes up as an alternative, but the real headline is that we're now at the point where AI can do the annoying part of setting up a machine if you give it eyes, a keyboard, and a tiny robotic index finger. The answer from these hosts is basically, nobody's thrilled. Windows 11 catches strays, Linux gets respect with caveats, and the caveat that keeps coming up is apps. If your workflow depends on something like Notion and there isn't a proper Linux client, your grand open-source adventure hits a wall fast. Then there's the ecosystem trap, which Apple absolutely benefits from iCloud. Device continuity, all the invisible glue that makes a Mac feel easy to live with, that's hard to recreate somewhere else. So the realistic answer isn't some dramatic platform conversion speech, it's compromise. Mac for productivity, maybe Android on mobile if you want flexibility, and a general acceptance that replacing the exact macOS workflow is harder than people like to admit. Linux gaming used to be the thing people brought up right before everyone changed the subject. Now SteamOS has real momentum, and that's a major shift. The problem is still the same ugly pair of roadblocks, DRM and anti-cheat. If a game doesn't trust the platform, regular people are not going to care how ideologically pure your desktop is. But if those compatibility headaches get solved, the idea that mainstream PC gamers might not need Windows anymore stops sounding like fantasy. That's the fun part of this conversation. We're suddenly close enough to that possibility that people can picture it, which would have sounded absurd not that long ago. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 got praise for something very simple and very important. The proportions actually make sense. That 4:3 inner display sounds great for reading and video, and the wider outer screen means you can type with 2 thumbs like a normal human instead of poking at an expensive bookmark. The big argument here is that earlier squarish Android foldables never quite nailed multitasking or comfort. They felt novel before they felt natural. This one apparently starts to feel more like an iPad mini that folds, and that is exactly why people are reading it as a preview of what an Apple Foldable could be. If Apple ever does this, it probably won't invent the category. It'll wait until the shape is obviously right, then act like calm was the innovation. For its upcoming EV platform is set to embed Apple Maps directly using a new map kit for automotive SDK, and this matters because it goes beyond regular CarPlay. It means tighter vehicle integration, including useful stuff like battery preconditioning before fast charging, which is exactly the kind of feature people want to work seamlessly instead of through 3 menus and a prayer. What's interesting is where Apple seems to be aiming. Google Automotive Services already does the full in-car thing, built-in maps, apps, cellular-connected infotainment, its own interface living in the vehicle. CarPlay, by comparison, has mostly been an overlay, and a dependent one. Your phone is doing the heavy lifting. So Apple looks like it may be trying to claim the middle ground, more integrated than classic CarPlay, less all-consuming than Google's full automotive stack. This is the uncomfortable part for Apple. Car makers increasingly want control over the in-car experience, and some of them do not want to hand the whole vibe over to Cupertino. GM already dumped CarPlay entirely, which is a pretty loud signal. Google's approach gives manufacturers a real operating system in the car, with room for third-party apps and dedicated displays above the steering wheel. CarPlay can look slick, but it's still limited by what the phone and the overlay model can do. So if Apple wants a real future in vehicles, it can't just keep being the nice thing that appears when you plug in your phone. It needs deeper roots than that. The voice message UI comparison is brutal for iMessage, and honestly deserved. WhatsApp system just sounds better thought through. Hold to record, slide up to lock, playback controls, speed control, transcription. It's built for the way people actually use asynchronous audio. iMessage, meanwhile, still feels weirdly clunky for a company that loves to talk about polish. And the broader point is good. Voice notes can hit a sweet spot between texting and calling. You get tone and nuance without demanding that the other person stop their life and answer right now. Outside the US, people have been living in that future already. Americans are still acting like sending a voice note is some exotic social experiment. Apple's new upgrade program with Klarna is one of those things that will sound either smart or cursed, depending on your financial habits. It's essentially a lease for iPhones, maybe watches later, with monthly payments and a buyout option at the end. If you don't buy it out, you never really owned it. For frequent upgraders, I get the appeal. Phones are expensive, prices keep creeping up, and a predictable monthly payment can feel easier to swallow than one giant hit. But there's a reason people get nervous around lease language and buy now, pay later logos. Credit risk is real, and the convenience can hide how much flexibility you're giving up. On a phone you replace all the time maybe, on something like a Mac that you might keep for years, losing ownership starts to feel a lot less cute. That's it for Apple Teeny. If your week includes a robot pressing BIOS keys for you, you're either living in the future or avoiding eye contact with it. Either way, thanks for listening. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.